Viewers like you make this program possible. Support your local PBS station.
Morning. You want to be somewhere within reaching distance? Because I will come to you for propaganda. Yeah. Pia, you're my...
Viewers like you make this program possible. Support your local PBS station.
Morning. You want to be somewhere within reaching distance? Because I will come to you for propaganda. Yeah. Pia, you're my first strike.
What will you ask me?
I'm assuming I'm going to ask you what it was like to get banned from the palace. Rambo, you, of course, numbers. Drug war, what's changed, right? Because it's on two fronts, right? You have the people think that's the main accomplishment, so what did they really accomplish?
Okay, breaking it down.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. We are at the 2018 State of the Nation Address. Use the hashtag SONA2018. The Rappler team is there.
Rodrigo Roa Duterte, President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Let me begin by putting it bluntly. The illegal drug war will not be sidelined. Instead, it will be as relentless and chilling, if you will, as of the day it began. Your concern is human rights. Mine is human life.
Wow. Wow.
Pasado alas 6 kanina, umalis sa tanggapan ng CEO ng online site na Rappler na si Maria Ressa.
Award-winning Filipino journalist Maria Ressa, the founder of the independent news site Rappler, vocal critic of Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte.
Maria Ressa, a high-profile journalist in the Philippines. She was named Time Magazine Person of the Year in 2018.
Maria Ressa carries the torch of press freedom in a country held in thrall by a populist president.
Rappler, since you are a fake news outlet and your are rife with innuendos and pregnant with falsity. Tell me, where is our lies, and I'll tell you where are yours.
Okay. Fantastic.
It's like, let me focus you first on what's happening in the entire information ecosystem. It's dark and light. Let me use that now, right? They're trying to actively form alternative news. And they've succeeded. Trending News Portal was a really good distribution. Mocha is a really good distribution. That's why all of a sudden our society is so polarized, because that's what they're doing. This group just amplifies, pounds, but they never share any of the traditional news sites. And then the traditional news sites are so blind that they don't even see they're getting killed here, right? This is fascinating. It's a snapshot of our information ecosystem today.
I never planned to be in politics. When I supported then Mayor Duterte, it was voluntary. Ang reach ng Mocha Usong Vlog, 50 million people. Malaki yung na-contribute ng Mocha Usong Vlog sa campaign kay Pangulong Duterte.
Pangulong Duterte, makapunta ng Marawi, sanay.
I entered the government helping with the information dissemination of different government agencies for social media. For a dancer like me, for an entertainer like me, to be appointed in Malacanang, that's really something big. Hello mga kababayan, mga ka-DDS. Live na live po tayo dito sa ating opisina, social media office po. Pakita muna natin yung mga ibibigay natin. At nahanap ko lang po sa sasakyan ko at itong ating ipapapremyo ngayon. Pakihawak na lang din. And last but not the least, ito po, ayan, collector's item po ito na coffee table book, Duterte Journey to the Presidency. Sa pagluklok ng isang social media president, sa pagluklok ng isang pangulo ng ordinaryong Pilipino. Ayan.
1,164 shares.
Ilan ang views?
Reached 233,860.
I take this as a God-given mission to become President Duterte's right-hand man in his fight against drugs, criminality, and corruption.
He's the first chief implementer of the government's war on drugs. After his retirement, he was chosen to clean up the Corrections Bureau, also plagued with illegal drug problem.
Makinig kayo, ha? Hoy, makinig kayo. Umupo kayo. Upo lahat. Upo lahat. Diyos, sabi, gumagamit ka pa rin, ha? Tutunaw na yung ngipin mo. Oh, ikaw. Ikaw na, oh. Ala na. Ito. Halata mga gumagamit, oh. Grabe yung ginamitan ng sabon ito. Utang na. Ito, oh, natutunaw na. Umatras na yung Joe. Oh, ito. Ay, utang na. Wala na, ubos na yung ngipin mo. Sa gagam. Yan ang shabu. Yan ang, ikaw, tanaw mo na. Ubos na yung paan mo, gums mo. Sige, go ahead. tuloy niyo yung sabon niyo dyan. Tuloy niyo. At tingnan natin hanggang saan tayo aabot dito. Tatanungin ko kayo, may pag-asa pa ba kayo magbago yung gumagamit at nagbibinta ng sabon? Ha? Pero kung ayaw niyo, bahala kayo. Meron kong paraan paano ko kayo pahinto. Trust me, I have my own way of stopping you from doing your illegal acts. Trust me. Believe you me, I can stop you. So, usapang lalaki yan. That's gentleman's agreement, ha? Gentleman's agreement. Bantay kayo pag meron pa kumarinig. Dapat wala na Sputnik na may involve sa droga, ha? Usapang lalaki yan, ha? Hindi usapang bayot yan. Siguruhin ninyo. Sige, maraming salamat.
We're sitting now with Davao Mayor Rudy Duterte. Thank you for joining us.
Salamat sa panahon mo.
Can you please, you are the man of the hour. People wanted to know whether you're running for president, vice president, yes, no. Where are you?
I told you to avoid me. I'm telling the Filipino people, wag ako, it's gonna be bloody.
So no qualms about killing killers.
Yes, of course. I must admit that I have killed. They 3 months early on, I killed about 3 people.
The level of poverty on the ground is phenomenal. They've had other presidents and other governments, and their lives have not gotten better.
Pero putang ina itong gobyerno, it is not for the people.
Duterte comes in, he offers not just change, he offers revenge. Whoever did this to you, I will stop it.
Pag hindi mo ako napatay ngayon, 4 months from now, lilitsunin ko talaga kayo.
Rodrigo Duterte and Alan Peter Cayetano campaigned in Cainta, one of the most vote-rich towns in Rizal. I've covered Duterte for a long time. I covered Duterte when he was still a mayor, who everybody thought was just a wild card. Mayor, ano yung favorite niyong breakfast?
Usually salted fish and eggs. Sunny side up.
He had a reputation of being an iron-fisted mayor. He had a lot of nicknames, like people were calling him Duterte Harry or the Dirty Harry of Mindanao.
Sir, because you're a journalist na ito, you're exempted from assassination. Parang yung premise mo kasi, journalist siya, bakit patayin siya? It's all wrong.
He may have been a politician, but he was an outsider politician, like a small-time politician. So his messaging was being someone cut out from political elite circles in Manila. I'm an outsider, and I'm here to change everything.
Tunay na pagbabago Duterte, nararapat na maging presidente. Tunay na pagbabago Duterte, nararapat na maging presidente. Si Duterte, si Duterte, si Duterte, ang aking presidente. Mahal kong Pilipinas.
I, Rodrigo Roa Duterte,
President Duterte, right after his inauguration, stood on a platform and said, if you're into drugs, sometime in the next few years, you will make a mistake and I will kill you. It took 3 hours. The first body was found a few blocks away from where he spoke.
yeah,
Please, sir.
the longest time.
A year. Actually, that's what I'm going to start off with, and I'll just say that a year ago, this is what we talked then, and You've done everything you said.
In the hindsight, did you really believe that I had a good chance of making it?
All of our surveys showed it. We had I'll show you all the things. Yeah. We knew by February.
By what standard na kuha ninyo?
Social media.
Powerful.
By February, we knew. In 2016, Rappler fought 2 levels of impunity. The first was the drug war. The war on drugs became a war on the poor. We had one team that would go out every night. They would come home with at least 8 dead bodies in it. The narrative of the government is that they fought back. These are extrajudicial killings or murder.
Kung mali yung ginagawa namin, you can criticize us to our hearings. Mali, tanggap namin, nagkakamali kami, kung meron kami pagkakamali. Basta, sana naman. Alam ko, deep inside your heart, alam mo na nakikinabang ka sa ginagawa namin war on drugs.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Impunity in the drug war was a continuing series. We put faces and names to the people being killed. We demanded the government be held accountable. Anyone on Facebook who questioned the people who were being killed was automatically bashed. We began to gather data. We began to look at the accounts attacking all of media. We stumbled onto something. Disinformation networks. When you see the network that spreads it, you can follow other networks and then you can see its growth. Mid-September, I started writing. First, the weaponization of the internet. The second piece was how Facebook algorithms impact democracy. As soon as we released it, we got pounded. I was getting an average of 90 hate messages per hour. Mocha Uson blog, she attacked Rappler, said, oh, Rappler's CIA. Followed by another blogger, Thinking Pinoy, who seeded the ideas that were foreign-controlled.
Rappler is misrepresenting itself in
Oo nga, parang ano ito eh, foreign-based to eh. Itong Rappler na ito. Diba? Hindi po talaga sila Filipino-owned company.
It was the second State of the Nation address. It comes out of President Duterte's own mouth.
Rappler tried to pierce the identity and you end up American ownership. You are supposed to be 100% Filipino.
Of course, we were covering it live. I automatically tweeted, Mr. President, you're wrong. I was told later on that offended him. What do you do when the president lies? Then it's repeated 1 million times. So people have no idea what the truth is. This set the stage. A week after the president did that, we got our first subpoena. January 2018, the government tried to close Rappler, tried to revoke our license to operate. In a little more than a year, we faced 11 cases.
Okay, sir. Sir, earlier in your speech, you said that the issue on the SEC ruling against Rappler is not an issue of press freedom. But at the same time, during your speech, you were giving comments about the media and about Rappler and Inquirer na sumusobra na kami. So what does that mean, sir? You say that this is not an attack on media, but you also have attacks on media in your own speech.
Let me give you an example. Huwag na tayo lumayo. Your inquisitive mind goes beyond its normal proportions. Boom, ayun na. Tignan ninyo, one of these days I'll file a plunder case. Pag pinayag ko plunder case, you will go to jail without a bail.
Because the end goal is to actually make you doubt the facts.
Paghatid ng balita. Yung mga pagkakamali ko sa Facebook, honest mistake yun.
Good morning. We're joined today by former Philippine National Police Chief Ronald Bato de la Rosa, who's now, of course, the Bureau of Corrections Chief also. Now, as soon as you file your COC, will be deemed resigned. Yes, the Bureau. Now, what made you decide to actually run for Senator?
Ito kaya gustuhan ko. At the same time, yung instruction ng President Duterte, huwag ka na mag-gobyerno, senador na takbuhan mo.
But other people also see it as the way of the President to put loyal lieutenants in the Senate. That's why supposedly he wants you there, and also Bongo, yung talagang loyal to the President to protect his interests, not just his agenda of governance.
Yes, ito yan. Makipagpatayan ako pagdating kay Presidente. Anybody would like to bring down the President? Nandiyan ako sa harapan ninyo. Makipagpatayan ako pagdating kay Presidente.
Wala po pong makinarya. Sinabi ko po dati pa, nasa social media, ako maasa sa mga naniniwala po, kaya naka-live streaming din po ako. Hello mga ka-DDS, andito na tayo.
Your boss is already talking to us. No need for that.
A prominent critic of Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has been arrested. Maria Ressa is CEO.
For cyber libel case was served past 5 p.m. inside Rappler's office in Pasig City.
Press freedom advocates say the government's charges against her are retaliation for her critical reporting of authorities in the Philippines.
Manila RTC Branch 46 ng warrant of arrest para sa paglabag daw sa anti-cybercrime law.
We'll go to the NBI. We'll go to the NBI. Can you guys come?
No further comment. Yeah, teka lang po, teka lang. Just need to finish the... Teka lang. Excuse us, excuse us.
You're running the clock. What did I think I could do by keeping me over? The NBI team and us, why are they not talking to us? We have until 9 o'clock to be able to post bail. Without the right documents, we cannot post bail. So there are stumbling blocks to prevent. It's a night in prison. It's a night period. Parang the delay is on purpose.
Free Maria Ressa! Defend press freedom! Free Maria Ressa! Defend press freedom! Free Maria Ressa! Defend press freedom! Free Maria Ressa! Defend press freedom!
My stay last night at the NBI really made me think about what this is all about, right? And for me, it's about two things: abuse of power and weaponization of the law. This isn't just about me, and it's not just about Rappler. I'll be very
this.
Our moments of doubt allow us to draw strength and courage from.
Viewers like you make this program possible.
Makipagpatayan ako pagdating kay Presidente.
Balita, yung mga
President to protect his interests, not just his agenda of governance.
Yes, ito yan. Makipagpatayan ako pagdating kay Presidente. Anybody would like to bring down the President? Nandyan ako sa harapan ninyo. Makipagpatayan ako pagdating kay Presidente.
Ako maasa sa mga naniniwala ko, kaya naka-live streaming din po ako. Hello mga ka-DDS, nandito na tayo.
Your boss is already talking to us. No need for that.
A prominent critic of Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has been arrested. Maria Ressa is
For
CEO.
cyber libel case was served past 5 p.m. inside Rappler's office in Pasig City.
Press freedom advocates say the government's charges against her are retaliation for her critical reporting of authorities in the Philippines.
Manila RTC Branch 46 ng warrant of arrest para sa paglabag daw sa anti-cybercrime law.
We'll go to the NBI. We'll go to the NBI. Can you guys come? We have until 9 o'clock to be able to post bail. Without the right documents, we cannot post bail. So the stumbling blocks to prevent it's a night in prison, it's a night here. Parang the delay is on purpose.
Free Maria Ressa! Defend press freedom! Free Maria Ressa! Defend press freedom! Free Maria Ressa! Defend press freedom! Free Maria Ressa! Defend press freedom!
My stay last night at the NBI really made me think about what this is all about, right? And for me, it's about two things: abuse of power and weaponization of the law. This isn't just about me, and it's not just about Rappler. I'll be very
Fresh.
And then the mother, who was still screaming, heard the questions, and being Filipino, answered them. At a will. No, my son is good. No, he's a good boy. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. I can't forget the scream. The story was called Execution at Cessna.
Di ba presidente na si Pangulong Duterte? Hindi ba dapat we submit to his authority, we respect the government, we respect the president? Sabi nga ni Ma'am Maria Ressa, parang sinasabi na karamihan ng mga naandito po sa mga kausong vlog ay mga bayaram troll, fake account, o yung tinatawag na bots. Tayo ay inaakusahan na ng pagpapalaganap ng, natawa ako dito pro-Duterte propaganda. Wow! Propaganda na pala ngayon ang maging makabayan. troll na pala ang pagiging patriotic.
Oy, hi guys. So we're now here at Rappler office. Ayan po. To prove to Miss Reza that, you know, we are not trolls. That we are here to express our outrage
and fight for our country.
Yes.
Because they are destroying our country and we're not going to sit here and let them do it.
So dito po kami, and this is what we're going to say to Ms. Reza and to the people at Rappler.
Tell your boss, she has no business destroying her country. She's American.
Yan po ha.
You take your orders from an American, how can you live with yourselves?
Hi, Ms. Reza. Sana po mapasa yung message namin.
This one, this is why. Because that account posted and then it was amplified by, what's his name? By Mocha. Everything can be turned upside down. Search. I just let Facebook know. Just this morning, they said, come to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. Yeah, for a physical protest at our office. The worst thing, of course, is the government amplified their call. Well, we don't even know whether we can trust the police to protect us.
From 4 times. I don't know why it's doing that. And we have been playing the same video file for all this time. I don't know why it's failing today. But the story is pretty much about Maria Ressa, who, by the way, received a Nobel Peace Prize last year. If you heard the journalists who received the Nobel Peace Prize for their fight for freedom of expression,
This lady was arrested several times for taking on the president head-on. The president was using the war on drugs to kill people. And what Repla, which is an online news magazine, and the investigations desk decided to take a deep dive in documenting the number of lives that Deontay killed with his allies. And she was arrested several times, imprisoned, got out, continued, and she continued to speak truth to power. She's a classic example of what investigative journalism is and what it takes to do that job. Maria Ressa continues to operate in the Philippines, even though she's half American, but she continues to work there. Now, there is a tendency of investigative journalists fleeing their country, and that actually makes it difficult for you to continue on the job. But Maria keeps coming back. She keeps coming back to Filipino, and she stays there. Of course, what also was strong was the social media war that government released and launched on her career and herself. At the moment when the video stopped, there is a group of people who were organized by government to go to Repla offices to demonstrate that what she was doing was wrong. So they also started a counter-narrative against the investigations that Repla was doing by using social media. So there was an attack online on Repla, but there was also an attack on Maria Ressa. In fact, at one point in the film, the president says that they will not stop at killing reporters of Repla. Now, that is a big threat from a head of state, who you will specifically take on and say, you're overstepping your mandate. And I think we've seen Maria say that. You're a liar, you're not telling the truth, you're overstepping your mandate. It is very few journalists who can stand up and speak up to power. I can imagine when the president of this country, Yoweri Museveni, stands up and you go and say, Your Excellency, that's not true, and you're overstepping your mandate, and then he threatens to kill you and says, I will deal with you decisively. I don't know how many of us will continue with our mission of investigative journalism. When a head of state stands on a State of the Nation address and says, Maria Ressa and Repla, we will deal with you decisively. And this goes to speak about the threats of investigative journalism and what people go through to speak truth to power. So essentially, after Maria Ressa continues with her investigations, she launches investigation after investigation, she becomes the face of press freedom. And then, of course, she was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize last year. But she continues to do investigative journalism. And she's a lady. She's a woman. She has spoken at different international conferences and continue to put up, to speak about investigative journalism and its role. The reason why we chose this story is there's so many other stories that have been told by investigative journalists who are male. However, this is a lady. In fact, when I was watching that documentary, I said, I want to be like this woman. And there's so many people who say they want to be like me, but I was like, I want to rattle some feathers. I want to do some amazing stuff. This lady, for me, was an inspiration. And she continues to do investigative journalism. Repla has received several funding and support from, philanthropists to continue doing investigative journalism. It has recruited more reporters, female, as you may have noticed. In this film, there are about 3 female investigative journalists working on the same project. It is a female-led organization with female journalists doing investigative stories. Another female journalist was arrested, of course, in this piece, but she went out and she continued to tell these stories. Maria Ressa's story is one that is an inspiration to many women all over the world that they too can, step out and question the powerful. So we will ensure that we leave a copy of perhaps a better copy. I don't know why the machines have refused, but we will leave a copy with Professor Chibita. And if any of you want to get a copy of it, you can go to Professor Chibita's desk and we can work out a way of watching this. It is not so much online, so you may not necessarily find it online. You may have to get that copy. But we sincerely apologize for this. I don't know why it has refused to play, and yet it plays. We've watched this film so many times. Technology is just technology.
Thank you, Solomon, for helping us move to the end manually. That was a manual move to the end. But sometimes we say in teaching that you have to give people enough to provoke them to want to see it later or to want to get more. So I guess everybody here has been provoked, and we now are looking forward to the panel. I'm going to invite them one by one. I think I'll only invite Raymond, and he can invite his panel up. Yes. Raymond, I see they have put a chair very far away for you here. I don't know if you want to be lonely, but you can come and take your seat here and invite your group to join you. Thank you. No, it's okay. It's fine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maracho. I'd hoped to, when Solomon first asked me to host this, I was very uncomfortable. And I told him we must find a woman to host this. We were unlucky to not find any, so I now must fill in. I'll tell you later a very interesting story when I discussed with my wife whether she'd be the one to host this. But let me start by perhaps inviting our panelists for today, and I'll start with Dr. Annette Kezabu. Dr. Annette Kezabu, thank you so much for accepting to be on the panel today, and we're so glad to have you. Cecilia Okoth from the New Vision, brilliant investigative reporting. I also, when I grow up, want to be like Cecilia many times. Anne Weisman, the country director for Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And Dr. Patricia Litho, who was our keynote speaker today. Sorry to take you off your water. Thank you so much to our panelists for accepting to be here today. We were supposed to have Jillian Nantume, but I don't see her around. But I guess that we'll try and catch up as much as we can on what she would have offered to the panel. And I guess that my story now is relevant. So when I was preparing for this panel, I went into the study and asked my wife what kind of questions she would have asked if she was hosting this panel. For context, my wife is this is where the bias comes in. My wife is a graduate from UCU's Media and Communications Department and a news anchor and a very strong support system. I found her reading a book of Wangari Maathai, the autobiography. And so she asked me, Raymond, do you know why Maathai's name is spelled with a double A? And I was caught afoot because I'd never stepped back to ask myself. And I learned Maathai was the first African woman to receive the Nobel Prize, just like Maria Ressa here. But during her divorce proceedings, the husband wanted to take away Maathai's name. So she stubbornly added an A to her name. So if you read anything from Maathai before 1970s, it's with a single A. If you read anything after that, it's with a double A. So I guess that the message that she wanted me to pass on was sometimes people have to be stubborn to stay in the spaces that they want to be in. And I know that a lot of our panelists here are very stubborn participants in this. Maybe I'll start with Cecilia. And the question that I want to ask is really because you're in the newsroom. I've just consumed some of the finest journalism you've done, which is on COVID-19 medics not getting paid, which is an investigation that took some time. What's your lived experience of women on investigations desks in newsrooms?
Thank you, Raymond, and good morning. Happy to be back. I must acknowledge this is also my alma mater. I was here 11 years ago, and little did I know that I'll be returning as a guest speaker, so I'm really privileged. Yeah, so it's been said women are usually the soft targets given assignments that really don't matter. Okay, they matter, but why should we be given the second, assignments that will be really, that will not be impactful? So I personally started in the newsroom as a journalist that would go for those soft assignments, going for press conferences. I so happened to cover the health beat for a very long time. But therein, I got really bored. You know, you'll attest to this. When you're in the newsroom, is this audible enough? Okay. You'll attest that when you're in the newsroom, you get to hit a stagnant position. And if you don't really stand up to do more, then you'll just be like that forever. So having covered the health beat, one time I was assigned to go to the Cancer Institute for a press conference. But then I noticed there were very many people on the veranda, very many patients and their caretakers on the veranda. And I was wondering, why is this happening? And they getting medication? So as I was climbing up to the Cancer Institute, I luckily followed two men. Then I did not know their roles, but I was just following them, and I managed to tap into their conversations. And one of them made a very big revelation that actually made me hit my debut in investigative journalism. He was just talking to his friend and frustrated about the radiotherapy machine. He was saying, can you imagine the machine is down and there are so many cancer patients that have come for radiotherapy and we can't really send them back, but there's nothing that we can do about it because they're already here. So that triggered me to nose around more. And so I ended up at the radiotherapy machine, and lo and behold, it wasn't really down, but people were kind of compromising the service to sort of have the haves pay for it, you see? And yet that was a free service. And so I went back to the newsroom and spoke to the investigative editor, is Felix Osike. And I told him, can you imagine this is going on in the Cancer Institute? So he says, hey, okay. But now you know you need to go slow about it. So the other tip for investigative journalists is you can't have everything in a day. So you have to really be patient and keep your supervisor in the know of your happenings. So he said, okay, since you cover health a lot, just pretend to be going there and going about your business and get to see more. So it's until then that I managed. I went back and forth to the Mulago Cancer Institute for close to 4 months. And I had to dress the part because the kind of investigative journalism I've been doing is the undercover bit, where you get to compromise your looks, you know, dress the part in order not to get caught. So that is how I managed to expose a number of medical workers that were actually asking poor patients to pay for a service that was really free. Yeah, so it kind of gets frustrating at a bit because when then I managed to do that investigative piece, journalists, you will know that you're as good as your last story. So I was saying, will I be able to do another investigative story of this magnitude? Because Oh, and then the other thing I wanted to talk about. So this was a very dangerous story. And so we negotiated back and forth with my editors on whether to put my byline on it or to have it as a New Vision investigative journalist. But then I said, I had reached the point in journalism where I had stagnated. What better way to come out than to, let me put my name there. There are very many people. We shall all die at the end. But the question is, how will you die? Will you have helped people? Will you have, created an impact? Of course, I knew I wasn't going to die the next day. But then that too was a big decision that we had to make. And guess what? It's from that investigative story that I managed to even fly out. I'd never been to Europe. They invited me for the Global Investigative Journalism Conference, and since then I have just been eager to get to publish more stories, and I've actually done a number of stories that I did not think I would ever do. So you have to just believe in yourself. First of all, know that you have to, that this is something that you'd want to do to help people, So believing in yourself is one thing and doing is another, yes.
All right, thank you so much. I wanted to bring Dr. Patricia into this conversation and maybe to speak first to the structure of the newsrooms. There's fantastic research from the African Center for Media Excellence that says there's only 24% of our newsrooms. Only 24% females in our newsrooms. If you look at the ACME Awards backwards, which award exceptional journalism, only 7% of those awards have been won by female journalists. And my own lived experience is the same. When I walk around the newsroom, I see less women. I also see the design of the newsroom is just an unfavorable experience for women to work in. What's it about the design and structure of our newsrooms that can change to make it more palatable, to make working conditions better so that you can attract more women journalists into the newsroom? Therefore, they progress into investigative journalism.
I did sit in the newsroom, but not for too long. And like you said, many of us here maybe have a certain dominant character. For me personally, the physical structure of the boardroom was not the issue. But those are the needs as a woman that I need. Of course, those monthly rituals that women have. In Radio Uganda, it was not a very hygienic place. So sometimes you've got to walk and pretend you're buying a drink at a hotel to find someplace comfortable. Maybe some people are having babies. Is there an option for daycare? Do people even understand? Maybe you're a young mother and you have certain needs. But going away from the physical arrangement of the newsroom, if you look at the culture of assigning journalists, when I was in Radio Uganda, we were only 2 women. There's a senior journalist, I don't know, I think she went into public health, she was called Miriam Natimba, that I found as the only woman there. And I was the next woman. And basically, she was sort of like the big sister holding my hand. But just the culture, because it's very male-dominated, sometimes men will sort of be insensitive to things that concern women, or will make derogatory remarks about women, not really targeting you, but there's a way it impacts on you if every day there are derogatory remarks about women, but also the assignments. Personally, I've never been attracted to television, or at that time, I had this thing about television, and that time I was very tomboyish. I wanted to be in my jeans and t-shirt, no makeup and stuff, and I was really tiny. It's hard to imagine, I was a very tiny person. And then they always gave me children's stories. And I'm like, I hate children. I can't stand children. They irritate me. But they always sent me to do children's stories. So in the same spirit, when it comes to beauty contests or things like that, they said, of course, Patricia, we can't send you to a beauty story because of, I was Maria Rosa type, dressing, attitude type. But there are those stories they always throw women to because they think you're female, you look young, you look tiny, you relate better with women. And I felt, no, I'm a more hard news person, serious person. That's how I perceived myself, that's how I felt, that's what I felt I was comfortable with. And even the story I shared earlier of The Confidential, when I came up with this, the first instinct to the editor was to assign it to someone else. I'm like, no. I came up with this, I should pursue it. Do you think you'll be brave enough to do this? Do you think you'll do this? I said, for your information, my father is military, I have access to the military. Okay, I had that plus. But you see how they try to push you away because you're female. So many times there's that. And of course, sometimes it looked like they were looking out for you, but sometimes in hindsight, you realize they're not, where they're like, you know, you're not safe to cover a story at such and such a time. Let's send Mujuni instead. You know, he's a man, nothing will happen to him. But we know that men can also be vulnerable. And for me, the emphasis should have been on my abilities as opposed to my gender. Personally, I consider myself fearless. I'm like, let's see what happens. Then I was a bit advantaged in a way that my father, of course a possessive father, he would drop me and pick me at work. Even when I had a function, let's say, that ended at 1 p.m., he would come and wait. When I read news, he would say, I am parked outside here. Sometimes we'd be with my mother, sometimes we'd be alone. When you finish, and the story, this is coming from the chief news editor at that time telling me, can you tell your father that there are men here who can pick and drop, you are interested in you? Eh? So you see, the issue wasn't about them protecting me or supporting my father. The issue was having sexual access to me, and my father is an impediment because he was ever present. Where are you covering today? When do you finish? He drops you, he picks you. So what mechanisms can we have for women? I remember we had a minister of information at that time, he rest in peace, Basokan Sadu, if you've heard about him, who had been a journalist himself. And one of the editors sometimes will say that if we have a story or we have an event, you know, as a government journalist, where Basoga is, you either go with a man or I won't allow you to go to an activity that's overnight. Which maybe was protective, which was good, but I think it would have been better to give me survival skills or for the media house to be able to transport me, accommodate me, and as usual to date from back then, the facilitation for journalists is so poor. So, you know, many times you're in a place of compromise, leave alone being woman, even as a male journalist, there's so many incidences. And for me, having started as a foot soldier, the things I'm sensitive to now that I'm in a corporate organization, where people will take journalists, and then once the story is covered, they consider that is done, especially if you make a mistake of sending your story before. They'll abandon you. You're in a Germany, they brought you from Kampala, and they don't care anymore how you go back because you've covered the story. Ideally, media houses should be able to facilitate, and you see Rappler seem to be able to facilitate its journalists. And many women get compromised at those points. Like the story I shared earlier, if I'd felt like, okay, now I'm going to sit on the couch or things like that, maybe let me just allow so that, you know, I have where to sleep, I have what to eat, you know? So there are those structures, some are physical, but most of them are sort of hidden, subtle, with religious and cultural connotations.
All right, thank you for that. Dr. Kezabu, if I could come to you. We're discussing a minority field of journalism, but a minority in minorities now, female participation in a minority field, which is investigative reporting. What is it you're hearing from students, or what is it that you're hearing from the academia world around practice of journalism that requires changing, that will improve participation of women in it?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to start from the point that Cecilia raised. These days you get students who are not ready to die for something. And I think that's what we saw in the movie, that Maria Ressa had a purpose for her life. And you'd want to say, why can't she just drop out and do something else? Probably the president had even offered her something which she could not take because for her, her purpose was to do that and just that. And as we speak with students, of course, most of them come at the age when they have very many questions about their career, about where they want to go. And those who are willing to be helped can be helped, but let me say this. These days, we get a crop of students who will come to you and say, I have started on journalism, but it seems there's no money in it. Okay? That's number one. So someone is looking for money. And I've started on this course, but as a woman, I think, who will marry? You know, eventually we have to get married. Where will I get married? You know, someone is concerned about that. Yes, it's a major concern. And I always tell them this. Number one, that if you're going for something like a journalistic career, you must be able to find, okay, in life you have to find something that you can die for. That is how you'll stand out. It can be as simple as, I started with music, dance, and drama. And many people have excelled in that field that I studied with. But after testing, I realized it was not for me. But at that point, I thought I wanted to be a movie star in Uganda. And after testing for 1 year, because students as they come also, they come testing. That's why they have all these notions. If there's no money, if it's going to impede my future life, then as lecturers, but as myself, Annette, I will sit you down and tell you and ask you whether you have found something in life to live for and die for. That is what Maria Ressa was all about. She had found something to die for. She didn't mind challenging the president. And if you're in that position, you don't mind because you know what you're going after. And that is what journalism is all about. Speaking truth to power, challenging the status quo, picking things that other people may not see. We always started them with the nose for the news. And sometimes you point them in a direction and they say, but there's nothing newsworthy there. Then I said, you haven't developed the eye for, you know, for a journalistic eye that can see what other people cannot see. So the most important thing in my position now is to be that mentor that the student is looking for, to push them to those careers like investigative journalism, where someone has their life at stake, but I would rather have my life at stake than have a boring life. When she was talking about that, I was cringing. I can't imagine myself at a desk for 15 years. What am I doing there? If I'm not growing, then I'm dying anyway. So I think that death comes in different ways, and one of the ways of dying is not doing what you are supposed to do. And the right thing is usually God has a way of sorting us out. If you find yourself in the journalistic career, ask yourself what specifically, and ask God, by the way. I also encourage prayer. Ask God, why am I here? And as soon as you know what you can die for, I tell you, investigative journalism, her turning point was, when will I not die anyway? When she asked herself that question, that was her turning point from a boring sort of, you don't know what it means to come every day. They are assigning you the same thing. In the New Vision, they used to send me to beauty contests. And those were now sponsored by the Nigerian High Commission. And I remember the Nigerian High Commission at that time, because we are disclosing, because we are journalists. For him, the whole thing was about giving us a lot of alcohol and picking at will to say, stay behind. There's that whole thing. But such things should never scare you, because then is when you can stand up for yourself. Like, I cannot imagine, okay, both my father and mother, I had left them somewhere in the village. They didn't know what was happening with me, but I was very, from a young age, I could stand up for myself, and that's very important. We cannot know how much we can stand up for ourselves until we are in the middle of danger. And for me, that fuels me. When I know that there is danger, then I know it's time for me to stand up. What kills me, and I always tell this to students, is dying while just seated in the same place. That, for me, that's death. And life is moving and facing challenges and overcoming them and sort of going over them, and that's your badge of honor. Maria Ressa had a badge of honor, and that was, she still does, because she's alive, but she's a living legend.
in our journalistic career because she stood up for something and she stood against somebody who is still alive, who is still president, and they're still challenging each other. You can imagine that. For me, that is excitement. So I thank you. That is how I encourage students if they come to me, but also even in the classes nowadays, as a lecturer, you should be a mentor at the same time. So people are looking to you for some of those answers. So once in a while you throw that in and encourage students about the career they are in, because let me tell you, in Uganda there is a way our curriculum is that when you're done with studying and you get a degree, you find people asking themselves the question they should have asked themselves when they were entering the university. What shall I do now? Yet there are so many opportunities before, during, and even after. I have seen some newsrooms taking up people of senior six. I've seen some newsrooms taking up some students who are still doing their classes, but then they are prolific in some way, and they are able to go and make a mark. So that is where we are as mentors and as lecturers, to encourage people to have something they can die for.
Thank you so much. Maybe to add another resource in your mentoring, I tell many of our friends at AI that even florists die of bee stings. So you'll die in any job that you choose to do. But maybe let me come to Anne now. You're in CAS and you do a lot of partnering with people that do journalism, but journalism that advances democracy and development. How much in that partnership can you do to improve women participation in investigative reporting?
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you. Maybe before I come to your question, let me just say it's really an honor to be here with these ladies and be listening to them. And it's great to have so many young women in front of us listening to us. Because, well, I come from a sphere and I represent a political foundation that advocates strongly for democracy. So as in journalism, in politics, you will often hear politics, conflict, business. Maybe it's not the best sphere. For women, not the easiest one. Well, maybe it's not the easiest one if you want to go for the easiest one. We sometimes hear also we don't want to put women into the position where they are being threatened, where they are being challenged. I cannot hear this, to be honest, because I do not like this paternalistic approach. Let the women decide where they want to be in the first place. Then also this question, is there money in it, or who wants to marry me? Let the woman decide what her goal is in life. And I can only ask the young women listening to us and tell them, well, maybe first you decide what is your own goal, completely independently from a man coming into your life or not. What do you want to achieve as a person? And then you go for it. And believe me, in your life, somebody will come, or maybe not, who will support you in this way. So do not give up what you as a person want to achieve because you are thinking of a marriage. A marriage, can be a happy marriage for your entire life, but can also end. And then? What did you sacrifice for somebody if you do not go for your own goals? Again, Raymond, before I come to your question, and I want to come to your question definitely, as we speak today and we have been watching this movie, why is it so important to have women in these fields? Because young women need role models. They need to see this is possible. So if we talk today and we say the UN has as a title, Break Bias, right, for the 8th of March, for the day tomorrow, if I read in publication on journalism in East Africa, and the chapter about women is called Cracking the Glass Ceiling, so it's always this breaking through, you know, fighting something. We are still in there in 2022, and we are still advocating for it. So role models are super important. I must say, for me, unconsciously, one of my role models was actually a female investigative journalist. Her name is Anna Politkovskaya. She was brutally killed in Russia. And together with Maria Ressa, there was another person, another journalist, who received the Nobel Peace Prize last year, and it was Dmitry Muratov, the editor-in-chief for the Novaya Gazeta, which is called the new newspaper. And she was writing actually for this newspaper. And her most important work was on the war in Chechnya that was being conducted by the Putin's Russia. And she also published a book on Putin's Russia. That's how she called it. So she was the very first one to go and to look into what was happening in this power structure. Now, as our eyes are also on the war in Ukraine, where human rights are being violated, where genocide of the Ukrainian people is going on, where crimes against humanity are committed right now, I think it would also do good to read what she was writing about Putin's Russia at the beginning of 2000s. I believe we will be scared and afraid of finding out that it's not much different. And you see, she was killed, but she was brave enough to speak up. And there are also many other journalists who are brave enough, female journalists. So Dmitry Muratov, actually, in his speech, he was dedicating his speech to all journalists alive, but also to those who have been working for his newspaper and died or were killed. So 6 people, out of them, 3 were women. 50% were women. So I think there can be no debate about are women brave enough? Can they stand? They can. They have proven in every area of life that we can. So there should be no debate about it. Now, where should we start? And Raymond, you asked me, yes, we work with media partners. One of our partners is also Media Challenge Initiative. And they invest into the new generations of journalists. The Media Challenge Initiative has been running a fellowship since 2018 that we are supporting. And I actually reached out to them yesterday and I said, can you give me some data? So I can tell you that in terms of applications, women are always outperforming men who are applying for the fellowship. In the fellowship, we have quite an equal number of ladies and gentlemen participating in each year. If we look into the former cohorts, equal number of female young journalists and male young journalists found their way into the profession, into the media sector. So it speaks for itself. There can be equality. And it's not about bravery and it's not about professionalism, because women and men can be as professional, as good, as brave, equal. There are really circumstances where we as CAS also want to break the ceiling. And the examples of the framework has been given already. Because journalism is also a workplace, a space where women work. And of course, women, when they go into this profession, they know for sure if they go and report somewhere, they will have sleepless nights. They will have an accommodation that is not comfortable. They know, and they still do it. But I think what women, equally as men, can expect from their employers is to facilitate a working space that allows them to first feel the safety and security, to feel the back. I think this is the most important. When AIJ did the documentary named Targeted, and you would talk with journalists about their experiences during the elections in January last year, many would say, yes, we go, we expose ourselves, but we, at times, really lack the support of our editors, of our employers in what we do. So I think it is also, we want to impact also this area, as a workplace, as a profession. So for the journalists to have space rooms, what about the social security? What about the health security? What about just the rooms? Can you go and work? I only know NBS from the inside. But does NBS, for example, have a room where you can put your children, where you can have your child while you're working on your material? Is there a changing table somewhere? What about sexual harassment in the spheres? We also need to understand that although journalists themselves are often threatened as a group, but there can be also weaknesses and failures going within the group. And I understand that people sometimes within the group do not speak up or out because they want to still stay together to confront the bigger challenge, right? But that does not give comfort to women working in these spaces. So I think this is also, and sexism is all over the place. So we would be blind or naive to think it does not take place also in newsrooms. Everywhere where human beings come together, we can face it. So these are just a few examples, but also for the kind of networking. What kind of spaces do we create for female journalists to network, to meet people from their own sector, but also from politics, business, and so on. Many women in different spheres, it's not only in journalism, would say, okay, the networking event starts in the evening, or it's on the golf course, or it's at the bar. Those are not the spaces where women would go for networking, especially when maybe they have children at home. So we need to be also very mindful with creating, spaces for networking that work for both genders. I am really happy, for example, that this conversation takes place at this time of the day. That people are at work and can be here and listen to this conversation. How difficult is it sometimes to have a conversation that starts at 7 p.m. somewhere when you need to rush home, right? And please don't get me wrong. I think it goes for both genders, for men as for women. I just think at a certain point we have accepted the fact that men would rather than stay. But I know many, many men who want to go in the evening equally to their children, to their wives, and not being at the bar with somebody else. And so the same goes for women. So for us, who we are advocating as Konrad Adenauer Stiftung for Democracy and Development, we strongly believe that democracy cannot exist without pluralistic society. That therefore, democracy cannot exist with a strong civil society, with strong journalism. And investigative journalism really brings out basically the most hidden in our societies. It questions the power, and we need it for democracy. And democracy is very, very strongly linked to peace and to progress. And that's why, and to economic progress as well. And that's why I can only, from our point of view, say we are investing as a German political foundation a lot into the education of new journalists. But this is very costly. This is very costly. And I really hope that we will also find Ugandan partners from private sector who are willing to invest as well. Because what we see right now also in Russia, what is going on, why so many people do not speak up? Why do they let their leadership commit all these crimes? Because by now they are afraid. Because propaganda has been ruling the country for a long, long time. And propaganda, in physical terms, kills people, thousands and thousands of people. So when you invest into journalism and also into the ethics of journalism, you also prevent propaganda to rule your country and to kill people. And by now, in Russia, every single person and every company realizes that it hits the company, the business. Propaganda hits and kills also the business. So I plea and I want to see Ugandan private sector investing strongly into journalism out of their own interest, out of their business interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne. And of course, we're at UCU, which is heavily investing in young journalists, and that's a good place to make a comment like that. Maybe to come to Dr. Patricia, then I can ask the young people here to ask their questions. There's also the crisis of the definition of investigative journalism as being only linked to politics or crime. And yet there's other aspects of investigative reporting, environment reporting, health reporting, where Cecilia has done amazing work. What is it that newsrooms can do to expand the scope of definition for investigative reporting so that it can attract much more people? Because one of the crises that I see, and maybe I am in a good place to address this, is because I sit at the editorial of National Media Group, is all our political reporters, the one they call star political reporters, are male. If you define investigative journalism as politics, they'll be the ones that qualify for it. So what can we do to just expand the scope of definition and allow for other aspects of the newsroom to also thrive in investigative reporting?
As academics, of course, the responsibility is to produce knowledge, but also disseminate, have that conversation. So the narrative seems to be restricting us to a very narrow space. It has to be politics, it has to be corruption, it has to be the other. But as I said earlier, it's really about those things that are concealed, that of public interest. So like if we start the conversation today, how many of us will step out and build on it and produce knowledge about it? How many of us will sort of try to redefine and make it known? So I think we need to have the conversation and define. We're talking about partnerships. This event itself is a product of a partnership, and I think that's the direction things are taking. So you can provide spaces to academics to speak about it on the different media platforms. We can work together with the Institute to redefine the definition. From here, we can do that. But also from her story, Cecilia's story, you can see that it doesn't have to really be that. Even the story I shared, it doesn't really have to be that. So there's so many things of public interest that need attention, that need proper research, proper documentation, evidence-based. And that's really the gist of it. and then you're able to present to the public something authentically. That is what really I see, that authentic presentation of facts, and this is happening, and this is how being done, and this is how it benefits the public. So we need to have those partnership conversations, use the different platforms, write about it, preach about it. Yes.
It's back on, no worries. So if you have a question, you can put up your hand. I don't know if we have a microphone to go around, but we will have a microphone to go around so that we can take your question. But as we get the questions, I want to also ask Cecilia about negotiation. One thing that I've learned through years of doing investigative reporting is negotiation. There's a time our boss at NBS used to tell Solomon and I that 2 of our stories are the entire newsroom budget for the year, and yet we want to work for 8 months and produce just 1 story. So how do you have negotiations around the investment that you need to turn around a story to make it a fantastic investigative report?
Well, luckily, newsrooms are now beginning to appreciate the role that investigative journalism brings. It would be better to invest in, for instance, a story that will give you more mileage for months than have a story that maybe you're going to speak about today and then it will be gone. So at the New Vision, for instance, we have an investigations desk, and they have deliberately encouraged us to pitch, because it's only through pitching that you can be able to get the funds. So if you pitch, write up a proposal that is worth budgeting or investing, then you have the money. But then also, like she mentioned, partnerships and collaborations. There are so many companies out there that are willing to sponsor good work. So whenever there's a time for, whenever like Conrad calls for applications, you just have to be ready to have a pitch that will sell you very well. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Maybe Dr. Kezabu, if you could just react around that. How do we have partnerships but also preserve the ethics of the reporting so that the reporting doesn't appear to be biased based off of the partnerships that we've created?
Thank you very much. I think for every partnership you go for, first of all, there is some tests that is done, behind the scene. The ethics, that's number 1. If you don't agree with a certain organization, I don't see why you would go for them as a partner. So that alignment has to happen. Although you need funds, sometimes people are funding what you don't agree with. So the alignment has to happen, I'm saying, even from your side and even from their side. Of course, for them, they speak for themselves with the funding. They might not bring the funding in. But also, many organizations worth their salt out there will fund a good story. I know that people have applied for these and have received them, these fundings and these partnerships. Why? Because by the time an organization comes into the country, even those outside the country, by the time they, the alignment has happened in your head before you have applied to be with them. If that company is worth, or organization is worth their salt, usually they want a good story. So the second thing is, after alignment, is you also must be good. There is somebody giving money in the first term and they realize that you are just peripheral and just picking things. So your depth is very important. If you are able to sustain that kind of partnership and funding. Then also number 3, I always tell people, don't compromise. I'm going back to the first one, but don't compromise what you believe in for funds. Is that problem where people decide to realign what they don't believe in, but then because there is funding, they realign their beliefs. I think that would kill me as much as boredom also does kill me. So yeah, so that realignment is very important, I think.
All right. Yes, Anne, you have a comment?
Raymond, if I may add to this from another perspective, because of course we collaborate together with our partners and provide or facilitate also some work financially. And I couldn't agree more. You need to look out from both sides for partners with whom you can work at the eye level, number one, and number two, where you share the values. I think the values is the basis for successful collaboration. And then all of the rest will just, fall together. But there is, of course, one thing, and this is especially very true when you go for investigative stories. And we heard it in the film and the documentary, and we will hear it everywhere. And being in the democracy space, I always find this argumentation. And this is when a state does not want journalists to speak up, to produce investigative stories, and does not invest, therefore, in the story, so there is no money. And then foreign actors come in because they appreciate their work. So the argumentation is very often, oh, those are just, the foreign agents. So this happens, and one needs to really think about it, to how not to compromise yourself by being called this, because this comes very quickly. There are certain patterns in authoritarian regimes, what they want to achieve. They want to that facts are being questioned. They want to spread fear, and they want to call everybody who works against them an international agent. And we heard the example, we saw the example. And I think it's very important, therefore, from the part of those who collaborate together with international community, to make it as transparent as possible, what is coming in, for what is being done, what is your work, and so on, so that you kind of owe it to your own audience to make them understand that you are not speaking on behalf of certain international groups, but in your own interest, in the interest of your own public. But it's just that sometimes, you need also to have a salary or to have, equipment to do so. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So now we'll take questions from the public, but I must let you know that at any one point, if a woman puts up their hand, they'll take precedence. Yes, so let's start with just your name and the question and who it's directed to.
Thank you very much. My name is Waswa Chisule. Thank you very much, CAS, AIIJ, and UCU for this wonderful event, and to the panel, and Mr. Munjuni for the insightful presentation. As Ms. Maria Reza said in the film, it's about abuse of power and weaponization of the law. I was reminded that we face similar circumstances in this country, which is unfortunate. I have two questions. Shouldn't we also encourage women, not only in the field of investigative journalism, but also in the field of citizen journalism, and specifically to use the radical tactics and critiques of heroes like Dr. Stella Nyanzi? My second question, isn't it a contradiction to expect women to investigate the abuses of power of certain fellow women who are in power? Given that according to certain feminist doctrine, that might be misperceived as pulling fellow women down. So is it Isn't there a conflict of interest and a contradiction there? And if so, how can that be handled? Finally, what policy measures can be taken to encourage more women to enter investigative journalism? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for those questions. Yes, please. At the extreme end there. Thank you so much, Wahid.
Thank you very much. Though I've been up and down, but I've been paying attention to some keynotes. Thank you to the facilitators. Now, my question goes to Dr. Patricia Litho. From what you spoke early in the morning and what you have spoken, you're one person that has paved the way for many. Quite also a different person from other ladies. And when I told people that I want to do war stuff, to go to the war zone and major there, people looked at me like, she's weird. When you talk about doing sports journalism as a lady, when you approach people that have been there, most times they are like, will you manage? Like there is that thing, they look at you, and being that some of us are not so graced with the muscles, they look at you and they're like, leave this for other people. So what advice do you have for people like us who want to take a different turn, the ladies who want to take a different route from the normal Gandhi Doreen? My name is Gandhi Doreen. And then I heard that there's going to be training for the ladies or the female journalists who are interested in investigative journalism. So I don't know, kindly to the organizers, before you leave, you tell us for those of us who have the passion, the interest, so that we know how we can go about to benefit from the training, or when it will be due, and the process, the procedure that we can take to join. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? All right, there's a lady here.
Thank you so much. My name is Immaculate. I only have 2 questions, and the first one is to Anna. Sorry. So, according to what you say, I remember you gave a scenario whereby your role model was actually murdered brutally. So, my question goes, after that incident, did it actually, if I was in your position, honestly, I would be like, no, I wouldn't actually go there. So why did you actually stand your ground and be like, no, women should go for what they want, even after that scenario? And then the second question goes to any of the panelists. One of you made a statement and said, I would rather have my life at stake than have a boring life, which I also agree with. But right now, I believe you guys have a certain ground that you stand on that many of us young journalists are still finding our grounds. Our grounds are still shaking. So how best would you encourage us that are actually entering this field to get to your level? Yes. Thank you.
There's a lady at the back. Sorry, I said president to the ladies. So I saw so many hands of men, but let's first have the lady, then we can take others.
Good afternoon. My name is Blessing, and I'm honestly grateful for this conversation, especially with Women's Day coming up tomorrow. So my question is, how are we going to be intentional and purposeful about making sure that these women that are doing investigative stories are not compromised, first of all, ethically, but also in terms of sexual harassment, because we have lived experiences. Things happen. You go to the field with someone and you're heavily compromised. So my question is, how are we going to be intentional about protecting these young women and even the women that exist in investigative journalism today? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can we take this round of questions, and then if time opens up for more, then we can answer more. So I guess we'll start with Anna, coming to Dr. Kezab.
Role models and why didn't I scare? I didn't get scared. You know, role model is what you believe what the person is about, not what somebody has done to this person. So this person was all about strength, was all about intelligence, was all about bravery, analytical mind, you know, going and talking to people, finding out the truth. And, you know, and this is what unconsciously I wanted to do. How it can end, yes. It can end dramatically. You can lose your life. But you see, the role model is in her and not in the acts of others against her. And that's why you still, when I think about her, I don't think about them killing her. I think about what she was and what she was standing for. And that's why she unconsciously was my role model. And if I may say, if somebody, you know, tells you, don't go there, sports, investigative journalism, and so on, I think you should listen to yourself. And the easiest question, or the easiest answer to it, I believe, would be just go for it if you want to, no matter what they say. Thank you.
Yes, and Doreen, I would like to pick it up from there. Then maybe I'll add on a few of one or two of the other questions. Like she said, go for it if that is your compassion, if that's your passion, your conviction. You believe it's sports, you believe it's war. And be firm. But most importantly, equip yourself. You see, many times we want to take a certain path, but we don't prepare ourselves. So let's say I want to go into sports reporting. What does it take to be a sports reporter? Forget about men or women. What does it take to be a sports reporting? How much reading do you do around that? Who's your role model? Your role model can actually be a man, yes, in looking at the skills, the abilities. So how do you make that your own? But many times some of us want to be something, but we are not preparing ourselves to be that. So I think this is something that needs to be emphasized, that if you want to go for something, prepare yourself to be that, which is sort of connected to what Blessing was saying about how intentional we can be. I think by steering people in the right direction, that this is the path you need to take. And you made a comment about, oh, now you've reached at a stage when I can assure you we have challenges as well. But we've also overcome challenges. It never, never, ever comes easy. I might make it look like it comes easy, but it doesn't. So seek advice as well. You know, many times as women, maybe we are nurtured not to speak out, to stay in, or if I talked about a sexual advance, you know, many times it's what's the term? It has disappeared. But basically, you're victimized. Yeah, a backlash, that's the word. Yes, many times it's a backlash on you. How are you dressed? What were you doing? Why were we that man in a room? And things like that. And that is why many times women are abused by the people closest to them, a relative, a close friend. You're feeling comfortable around them, and you don't even know now how to get out of that and deal with it. So again, it's about those awarenesses and doing something about it. Personally, at some point, I always walked with a stick and a knife. I always wore boots and jeans, and I stuck a knife and stick and a spray. I always had it with me. And people thought that was weird, but I knew I'm not safe as a woman because of all those funny things that happened, but I was also ready. I also took interest in martial arts, and many times they say these things and I feel, it works. Some of those stories I've told you, that's the only way you get yourself out and run. And there are many stories, but you need to equip yourself intellectually and physically. Invest and prepare yourself for that. And maybe lastly, I just want to comment on Mr. Kisulu, you said, about pulling the woman down, I think you've misunderstood the concept. Pulling a woman down, I mean, it's just like men should not report about corrupt men or men who are doing something wrong. No. What it means many times is women not wanting others. Because, for instance, let's say, Patricia, I've enjoyed this space of being the only woman, maybe doing science communication. If I know that Doreen wants to come my way, I will frustrate her. I'll deny her those capacity building opportunities and things like that because I'm in a position of power. It is not about not reporting the wrong things women are doing. If a woman murders, you should report that she's murdered. And that's what we're saying, that sometimes as women, you have access to these spaces, and you might not look as threatening as Solomon. If you see Solomon around the health center, you're like, ha. You know, people even panic, even things that haven't been heard. When they see Patricia, they might like, oh, she's more concerned about beauty and things like that. Like she shared how she ventured into that. She was at the Cancer Institute. She was not a threat. Possibly her face is not as common as Solomon. So it was easy for her to gather information. So to me, prepare yourself, build your capacity, strategize for what you would like, and state the conviction. Seek out role models. I don't know if I stand as a role model, but me, I'm always open to give advice. So take our contacts. We are not aliens. We might look like one, but we've been where you've been, where we are confused. Personally, one day I wanted to do sports. The other day I ran to investigative. The other day I wanted to do this. Sometimes you're at that stage in your life where you're confused about the path you want to take. But there are always those people who have been there before you, who are doing similar or the same thing, and normally they're willing to offer advice. Thank you.
How to avoid being compromised. You see, when you embark on investigative journalism, you will face a lot of temptations. I personally, when I was doing this investigation at the Cancer Institute and most recently at the COVID-19, when health workers were still in COVID-19 medication, I got so many calls, so many people wanted to bribe me to drop the story. But then I thought to myself, is it worth it? After eating that money, however big the sum of money may it be, will it be worth it? Will it be worth your credentials and your name? So you really first have to get annoyed. For instance, Uganda was having a few COVID vaccines at the time. So you have to get annoyed and think and say, why are then health workers stealing these vaccines that would otherwise benefit people in the community? Just think of your grandmother who's trying to walk into the health facility and they're not getting the service because they're saying it's not there. And guess what? People are behind here, making that money. So get angry as an individual and start probing things at an individual basis. Even if it is not you, you will have a sister who will die giving birth because of shortage of blood. You will have an auntie who has probably got an accident and can't access that immediate care because of some other person's selfish interest. So look at investigative journalism as being a vocation. Compare it to priests and nuns who give their life to serve God, even if they say happy are those who believe without seeing. Look at it at that level, and that's when you will begin to get the benefits. And then, how do you encourage to get to the level that we are? The truth of the matter is that you're not going to wake up today and start embarking investigative journalism. That's a lie. I told you I got my breakthrough after 7 years. But how did that help me? I mastered my beat and built my sources, and when I was ready to then pursue this, things just fell in place. So you have to first master how to write, how to deliver your story, how to package your story so that you can be able then to shift to the level of now writing in depth. So it's not going to be a one-day task. You have to be passionate. If you're looking for money, then I'm sorry, journalism is not a profession, because we have been there for years and we have not seen the money. But what keeps us going is the passion. For me, it's the passion. Otherwise, if I wanted money, then I'd probably be somewhere at a PR company. I actually majored in public relations at this university, but I made the deliberate choice to go and do internship at a media house, because even my classmates, very few people were interested in print. But guess what? How many organizations come to look for good PR practitioners in the print section? There are very many people who come. Semakula was a colleague, and he's now a distinguished, head of a whole graduate school, media studies. And yet this was someone who was in the newsroom. So you have to first master the art of writing to be able to get to a level that you really want to be.
Thank you very much. I think that most of the questions have been answered, but there are some things I wanted to speak to, and I wanted to speak to her question where she says, how do we get to the place where you are at? Yeah, someone, I think that was Blessing, she used the word being intentional. You see, there are small things that can hinder you, even if you have everything together and your purpose is together and you know where you're going. Someone just offering you transport. You go for your first reporting, and someone says, enter the car, I'll drop you where we are going. And then as you are in the car, and it means that you're not purposeful in the first place. When you're in the car, he says, hey, by the way, it's lunchtime. Let's pass here. I was going to Sheraton to have lunch. Now you found yourself at Sheraton having lunch with this man who, and then as you are having lunch, this is not an intended date. This is just everything is happening to you as if accidentally, but it's taking you out of your purpose. So when will you file that story? Okay, so now you're having lunch, and Sheraton lunches take 2 to 3 hours. There's a starter, meanwhile you're talking to a stranger, to someone who was supposed to be your source, but now we don't know whether you are now a girlfriend because it looks like a date. Then by 3, he says, by the way, where are you going? You say, oh, I was going to the newsroom, but I think it's late, I can file this story tomorrow, so where do you stay? I stay in Kira. Yeah, I am going in that direction. You are in this person's car, you go. Find yourself, then when he's in Kira, he's a family man, passes through the supermarket to buy things, he says, hey, by the way, do you stay on your own? You say, yes. He says, yeah, come, pick what you want. You pick what you want. Are we still on the story? You pick whatever you want, you take it, and you have forgotten the story, right? But there is another way of compromise, and I'm combining two things. Compromise can also come in a way of, there are security organs, even in this country, which their work is to buy stories. They wake up in the morning, they scan through the stories, they look through the names, they look for contacts. Suddenly they want to meet you. And when they come, they will not tell you they are a security person, but they will sit with you and they will kill that story. That's a direct way of killing a story, and that's their work. Someone is paid so and so much money to buy stories, to kill stories. If you are, it's in investigative journalism. If something has been put out there and this is a developing story, that is their bait. They pick it up, they pick you up, and if you are not hard mahogany, they will compromise you. How do you become that hard mahogany I'm talking about? I remember when we were at Makerere University, students go through the same life everywhere. You buy a chapati and buy a packet of milk, snip it on the top, just with your chapati, that's your lunch, but you go and file your story. That is the level of life you are at. Stay at that level and do the things at that level, and as you build, know that everybody has gone through the same life. The whole thing about money that people don't talk about is that there is nothing as compromising as money. I used to say, even just a boyfriend giving you money, I used to say, what are you buying? So we had a group, so also having the same peers who have the same values is very important. We had a group who would walk from Makerere University and walk through Nakasero. Then we are in town. We do what we want to do. Again, get in a group of 2, 3, again walk back. And that's okay. Right now it's healthy. That time you just looked poor. Because when you walk, you are dusty. If you're getting someone's office, You come there, everybody knows you're a student really because you've been working. But then that's the stage of life you are at. Don't compromise it and want to be in someone's Mercedes. You don't know how they got it. Just be at your level and don't compromise yourself. Don't compromise your story. Don't compromise your purpose. Because if she compromised her purpose, that story would never have seen the light of day. But then so what? What remains of you? Emptiness. So also guard against that emptiness that comes when you have compromised, when you've sold yourself out, and sometimes for lunch. Imagine, think about it. Lunch at Sheraton. You will buy yourself these lunches, you can even invite people. You reach a stage, if you build very well with the end in mind, you will buy even for people at Sheraton lunches, you'll be the one to take them out. But don't let this man. And you know what has happened? I am sorry, but I must speak to this because it's life skills. What has happened is that someone has gone to cover a story and ends up becoming a second wife. You have gone to cover a story. This man who has bought things from the supermarket now follows up. You're then supposed to follow up your sources. No, your sources are following you up. And then you end up in a trap. You're like, hey, here it seems things come easier than journalism. You just know that at the end, there's a cost to anything that you do. So be intentional. I like that blessing. When you're intentional, you eat very little right now, but you become better much later. I think I wanted to speak to the process of becoming, and that process is that you are intentional about it. Stay with the students and eat what is served in the dining, and still do your stories. Fine. I'll share this. We used to go to Radio 1, to different radio stations and do jingles so that we can get some money, and would be so proud of that money that you have made, not the money that someone else has given you. I was never proud of that because from home I had been told that someone's money is someone's money. If you're picking out money and giving me, what are you buying? Because later I know it will be costly. So think about those things as well. The small things that compromise us and kill the bigger picture. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. A round of applause to our panelists who've done us some justice almost for 1 hour. Thank you so much. I couldn't be more glad to have moderated this. I will hand over power, something that's very hard around here, to Dr. Evelyn. I'll now hand back the microphone to you.
Thank you very much, Raymond. Mr. Raymond Mujuni, thank you for getting these ladies to speak a lot of sense. Let's clap for them. This has been one of my most enjoyable things, to just sit on the other side and listen. And I think that one of the skills we don't get to talk about a lot is the listening skill, that sometimes you really, really need to listen. And we've listened. Thank you very much. I have learned a lot from all of you. And I think that everyone here has learned a lot. We want to appreciate you. And since Annette has said that, Dr. Kezabo has said that everybody has their level, when you're a student, you must eat with your fellow students. Unfortunately, I'm only inviting the panel and AIJ and CAS team to lunch. So our dear students, please go have your lunch somewhere where you normally have them. We thank you very much for coming. It has been really, really wonderful. I didn't expect all this number to come, but I'm glad that you came, and hopefully you picked up a skill or two. There's so much to talk about here. You can continue the conversation with your colleagues and know that everything is a process. There's a process that got them to the high table, and keep your process open. It will get you there someday. You know, one of the things I was taught a long time ago was to never compare with anyone, because you don't really know anybody's story. Always remind yourself that you're only 20. Sometimes it encourages me to say, but they are 40. What will I be in 40 years? You know? So always remember that there's a path and there's a process. If you stay the course, you will be fine. And somebody is putting up their hand. I don't know whether this is to Raymond or to me, but Yes. 1 minute.
Thank you so much. My name is Agaba Kenneth Amponda, and I'm a fourth-year law student of law. And as well as I serve as the speaker of the Uganda National Students Association. I must say that I'm just appreciating the great work and the initiative, as well as I leave a recommendation behind that such a platform is very nice for the students within this nation. But the challenge we have is that, for example, the audience around here, there are people who have already taken a choice to say that let's study journalism. But we have students there in, let's say, Karangara district, let's say in Western Uganda, in Northern Uganda, that are still at secondary level. Let's say in O level, where they make their choices in A level, whether they should do journalism or not. So before we look at the numbers of women joining investigative journalism, how best can we encourage these young students from down at the level of O level to have that interest in studying journalism? So my call is that maybe with such platforms, we can extend them regionally on region basis, and we call upon students from such levels to come and join such a nice conference. Thank you so much, but thanks for the good work.
Thank you very much. And so for that matter, I would like us to first clap for Conrad Adenauer Stifter. Let us clap for African Institute for Investigative Journalism. And of course, let's clap for Uganda Christian University. And in particular, the School of Journalism, Communication, Media and Communication. And I would like to now invite Professor Chibita to officially close us off.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marachto, and thank you, Raymond, for moderating such a lively panel and a productive one. And thank each one of you, our dear panelists, for your input. Thank you also for the life skills. We don't take those for granted, and sometimes those are the ones that make or break an investigative journalist. So we are very grateful. As the School of Journalism, Media and Communication, I'd like to thank our members of staff that are here, Dr. Napakol, Mr. Senoga, Mr. Semakula left, Mr. Kiva was here. There may be others. I'd like to thank you very much for making the time to come. I thank the students for being here and for your very, very brilliant questions. I thank our student leaders. I would like to thank, we'll start with Konrad Adenauer Stiftung for supporting this event. We are very grateful, and we are also happy to meet you at UCU. We hope we shall have a few more opportunities to meet. I'd like to thank the African Institute for Investigative Journalism. This was a brilliant idea, really, really brilliant idea, and we appreciate it. Let's plan to have more of these. I actually got a brain flash that we could have a monthly movie afternoon or night now that the curfew is down. So that might be a good idea, I think, to generate debate on these issues. I'd like to thank the leadership of Uganda Christian University for the support, for giving us the environment to be able to do this. We thank the technical team, we thank all the organizers, the students who supported us, and everyone who's been a part of this. If I've forgotten anybody, please forgive me. You just know that I thank you as well. I don't know if Emily wants me to make she's already done it anyway. She's already done it. I think with that, I don't know what they say, we declare this closed or something like that. I will pray for our lunch. Okay. I don't know if Solomon wanted to say something. Okay. All right, let's pray. We thank you, Lord, that we've had this opportunity, that in spite of the glitches, we've had such a vibrant and productive discussion. We pray that these ideas will take root and that we'll see a change in the opportunities for investigative journalism for women, as well as the courage to do it, that we will see a change in the environment in which investigative journalism takes place, but most importantly, that we will see change in the things that we investigate. We thank you for our lunch, and we ask that you bless us as we go for it in our different places. And we pray for this partnership, that it will thrive and achieve its purpose. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.